Hey everybody, this is Tom Salemi. Happy New Year to you. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. Got a great episode for you this week. I'll be speaking with Tom Polen. He, of course, is CEO, president, and chairman of Becton Dickinson. First time we've had Tom Polen on the podcast. Excited to have him share the plans for BD. They're focusing on some core areas going forward. We'll hear a bit about that on the podcast today, and we will hear even more about it. On May 10th, Tom Polen will be our opening keynote at DeviceTalks Boston. We'll be opening registration for DeviceTalks Boston next week. We'll be starting with our early bird rate. So keep an eye on devicetalks.com. We'll sort of have a slow rollout of registration. And then, bam, we'll hit you with a lot of information about the agenda, speakers, and so forth. So keep an eye on devicetalks.com. We have a new feature in this week's episode of Device Talks Weekly, introducing the Device Talks Weekly Fastball. It's a sort of pitch operation where I'm allowing startup executives, founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs to record a 2-minute pitch that will run on these podcasts. So I'm happy to bring you a pitch from a company that I know a little bit about. I've had the opportunity to get to know their founder over the last 2 years. We still have sort of a COVID era relationship. We've been communicating a lot on LinkedIn. Tried to get together this week, but was not able to do it. But excited to bring their story to the Device Talks community. And if you'd like to be part of Device Talks Weekly's fastball pitch, shoot me an email at tsalemi, T-S-A-L-E-M-I, at WTWHmedia.com. That's tsalemi at WTWHmedia.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll send you the link. We're kind of having a slow rollout of this as well. But again, my hope is that we'll bring more voices to the podcast. I would love to give some time to our startup entrepreneurs. I love entrepreneurs. I love startups, and would like to help them get their stories out to potential partners and investors. I think that's all I have to share right now. So let's get this podcast episode started. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
All right, well, this is where I normally welcome Chris Newmarker to the podcast, but Chris, unfortunately, is feeling a little ill this week and is dealing with a lot of snow and closed schools and such. So we brought in as a special co-host of this first podcast of 2023, Chat GPT. Chat, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. That was my best robot voice. I'm sorry.
You sounded just like Chat. This is actually another entity who knows everything. Sean Hooley, associate editor of Mass Device. Sean, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's off to a good start. You just said I know everything.
And now the expectations are exceedingly high.
A lot of your listeners will probably disagree by the end, but hey.
Hey, that's what we're here. We're here to demonstrate. I demonstrate my ignorance on a weekly basis on this podcast. It's a great thing about being a journalist. So you have a good break?
I did. It was very relaxed. Didn't do a whole lot of much of anything, but not too bad. Enjoyed the time. Yeah.
Same here. No, I made a commitment to not do anything. Every time I was sitting on the couch and a thought popped in, I really need to do X, I realized I didn't really need to do X, so I didn't do X. I watched a lot of Andor on Disney Plus. I don't know if you're an Andor fan. I haven't finished it yet, but a very good series. So, but
I've got to catch up on all those Star Wars series. They dropped, like 2 or 3 on my head without me really realizing. So
I skip over most of them. Andor's the best one. Obi-Wan was a bit disappointing. Same with Boba Fett, but Andor's set the new standard, I think. But enough with the geek talk. God, these poor people have to listen to us talk about Star Wars. We're here to talk about medical devices. You have the honor of rolling out the Newmarker's Newsmakers for the first week of 2023. So don't be nervous, Sean. No pressure.
It's a little bit of pressure. You can't feel it over here, but I'm under it.
I can see you sweating there under the Klieg lights in your apartment. Those aren't Klieg, and you took the Christmas lights down, so I can see that.
I did. Well, I'm in a different room than the Christmas lights were in, but they are down. So it's all the season's over.
Great. So before we begin the Newmarker's Newsmakers, we will, as I mentioned at the top, we'll be introducing a new feature a little later on called the DeviceTalks Fastball. We'll have a pitch from an exciting new startup. So stay tuned for that. And of course, later on, we'll hear from Tom Polen, the CEO of Becton Dickinson, who will be our opening keynote speaker at DeviceTalks Boston, which is happening on May 10th and 11th. So, all right, Sean, let us begin at number 5 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Number 5 to start the new year is Zimmer Biomet to acquire soft tissue healing company Embody. So Danielle covered this yesterday.
Danielle Kirsch, senior editor.
Danielle Kirsch, yep. She said that Zimmer Biomet announced definitive agreement to acquire Embody for up to $275 million. So it's $155 million at closing, and then $120 million in future milestones. Zimmer Biomet CEO Brian Hansen said that Embody has differentiated products and an innovative pipeline in sports medicine, and that's they're trying to increase long-term growth and drive value creation with the acquisition. So it's probably our first big piece of M&A for the year.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else, and so it's a good start for Zimmer, I guess.
Zimmer Biomet definitely announced its presence with authority, as they say in Bull Durham. But as an aging American, very happy to hear about Embody's complete portfolio of collagen-based biointegrative solutions that support healing in the most challenging orthopedic soft tissue injuries. Good. Great. I'm going to need I'll need some healing, I'm sure, in the coming years. I probably could use a little bit right now. But all right, great start for Zimmer Biomet. We're actually hoping to have Zimmer Biomet at DeviceTalks Boston. So hopefully we'll be able to learn some more about this acquisition. If not then, maybe beforehand. Maybe we'll get them on the podcast to talk about this. That would also be great.
And I forgot to mention they expect to complete it next month. So that's one more detail.
Very important point. Fantastic. All right, Sean, let's roll on to number 4 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Number 4 it's a bit of a combination. One of the better performing stories on the site has been this news out of CES 2023, the consumer electronics conference. Opteev to unveil breath analyzer that detects COVID-19, flu, and RSV. So it's really interesting. It looks, the image on the site, if you check out the story, it looks like a little breathalyzer. And it gives results in less than 60 seconds, multiple use, rechargeable. They say they hope for it to become an affordable diagnostic option. So they unveiled it at CES in Las Vegas. And if you want to hear more about some of the stuff coming out of CES, Danielle Kirsch covered all the medical technologies you need to know on medical design and outsourcing. Got a cool little roundup with a bunch of widgets. And yeah, check it out. It's obviously, every year we look forward to kind of checking out some of the new medical technologies that are debuting there, and it's an interesting time, interesting place for innovation, I'm sure.
Absolutely. No, I've never been to that conference. I'd love to go. I know Dassault Systems had a booth out there about their showing their virtual twin or their virtual technology. It seems every year you get more and more like genuine medtech news coming out of there. So definitely want to try to make my way over to CES at some point. And I love this concept. So it says the device uses a silk. Danielle wrote, the device uses a silk-based biosensor that attracts the electrical discharge of respiratory viruses. So this combined with an artificial intelligence processor filters out potential inaccuracies. So as someone who just dropped $50 on a couple of boxes of tests and got my free ones in the mail and are getting ready for the season of testing, this would be fantastic to have something that's reusable and rechargeable and could detect all three. That's quite an advance. So
it'll be interesting to follow. They said that they submitted it to the FDA this past summer, so it's not marketed in the U.S. right now. But I do wonder if perhaps we'll see it.
Maybe we buy a bunch and have them at the registration desk at future conferences, and people have to blow to get into the conference and get tested. So seriously, lots of interesting applications this could be used for. So very cool stuff. All right, Sean, let us roll on to number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Number 3 is more spinoffs. We've been seeing a lot of spinoffs in medtech, and just the other day, GE Healthcare's spinoff from General Electric became official. They began trading on the S&P or on the Nasdaq, and they joined the S&P 500. Their stock was up on the 4th anyway, on January 4th when they started trading. I haven't checked it out today, but it's definitely an interesting time for GE Healthcare. They also announced the addition of a former Amazon executive as their first chief technology officer. So they're clearly kind of committed to that angle of I believe they said that they formed a technology sort of committee at the company, and he's going to lead that. So,
and this is Dr. Taha Kass-Hout. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And this is big news for GE Healthcare. And we had just breaking this morning, actually, some other big spin-out news.
That's right. So Baxter announced a whole sort of structural reorganization plan, or sort of they called it a strategic roadmap, but it includes. Biggest news out of it is the spin-off of 2 business units that it plans in the next 12 to 18 months. It plans to spin its renal care and acute therapies units into one, so they'll spin it together into one publicly traded company. And so they already have competition from another kidney spin-off with Medtronic and DaVita last year announcing their plan for a new kidney company. And as we just mentioned with GE, Zimmer Biomet, that we mentioned earlier, also has a spinoff. They spun off the ZimV dental and spine business. BD spun off its Embecta diabetes business last year. So it's 2023, but we're still doing spinoffs. I thought 2022 was the year for them, but we're going to carry it on to 2023.
Yeah, I don't know how the macroeconomic issues like interest rates and such impact spinoffs, and whether it'd be more or less likely to happen with that going on. I'm sure someone listening has a better understanding of that than I do, but I'm also intrigued by, and this I think something we'll need to explore in the podcast in the future, just why we're seeing this happen with Medtronic and now with Baxter, the spinouts of the renal care businesses. I don't know if something's changed on the technology side, if companies like Outset are sort of disrupting the space and making them less attractive, if there's a reimbursement change that's making them less attractive. I'm guessing something has to have occurred to make sense for these spinouts to happen. So definitely something we need to track down. If anyone listening has some thoughts, make sure you reach out to Sean or me. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. Welcome to our first Device Talks Weekly Fastball Pitch. We're going to hear from Nii Oyeni, founder of Dialysis X.
My name is Nii Oyeni, and I lead a company called Dialysis X, where we have figured out a way to help kidney failure patients have their dialysis treatment without using needles. And we do this so that patients can enjoy much better health outcomes, and providers and payers can save a lot of money. You see, in America today, nearly 500,000 people, that's more than population of residents in Miami, Florida, depend on hemodialysis to stay alive. But the reality is, dialysis stinks. Because although needles are used to perform dialysis, they cause severe and often fatal complications that not only impact patient outcomes, but also increase the cost of care for payers and insurers, cut revenue for providers, and severely limit the adoption of home dialysis among patients. Our solution is a needle-free vascular access port, which is implanted during a routine outpatient procedure and pairs with a single-use detachable cap. It is easy to use, and it's a safer alternative compared to traditional solutions, including needles, catheters, and grafts. Plus, it addresses the complications that have forever plagued existing vascular access devices. Our key team comprises an engineer, a vascular surgeon, and a biomaterial scientist. We're a lean but very nimble team, and our ability to do surprisingly more with less is one of our biggest superpowers. At the moment, we are neck deep in product development. We've successfully scaled down the device footprint to the size of a quarter and are performing benchtop testing with our eyes set on animal and clinical trials in the next few months. We're always on the lookout for strategic partners, including OEMs and financial backers, who believe in and want to join our mission to redesign the future of dialysis care. We are Dialysis X, and this is our fastball pitch.
Thanks, Nii, for throwing our first Device Talks Weekly Fastball Pitch. If you want to learn more about Dialysis X, reach out to Nii at his email. It is ooyeniyii@dialysisx.com. All right, Sean, let's roll on to the second, number 2 like fourth or second. We'll say number 2 on the Newsmakers list.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's another duo, another combination, but there were 2 big fundraising bits of news yesterday, and it was Volta Medical raises a 37.9 million Series B round, and Cardiac Dimensions raises a 35 million Series D. So just a couple companies bringing in more capital. With Cardiac Dimensions, they develop minimally invasive treatment modalities for heart failure. Its lead product, the Carillon mitral contour system, is a minimally invasive system for restoring natural mitral valve function without damaging leaflets. So, yeah, it's just an interesting technology to follow. They said that they want to use the proceeds from the Series D to enroll in their pivotal study, and it's still an investigational device in the US, although it's authorized in Europe and Australia. So another one to watch to see if it comes to the States. As for Volta Medical, this is an interesting, software-based technology for treating AFib, and it's an FDA-cleared VX1 AI-based software for interventional cardiac electrophysiology. That was a mouthful. Yeah, so they use machine learning and deep learning algorithms to assist in the real-time manual annotation of 3D anatomical and electrical maps of the human atria. So it's more interesting technology, but they also announced that they brought on a new chief financial officer, and it happens to be one John Slump, who most recently served as CFO of Surgical Innovation Associates, which was recently acquired by Integra Life Sciences. Before that, he co-founded Farapulse, which did pulse field ablation, and Boston Scientific acquired them. So he's got a good track record. I wonder what Volta's planning with him leading their financial business or financial part of the company.
No, for sure. I mean, it sounds like he's able to get companies in a position to be acquired and to meet the due diligence of strategic buyers. Just looking at the investors in the 2 companies, looking at Volta first, Vensana Capital led the funding, Lightstone Ventures, great firm, and Gilda Healthcare all provided co-investment. And then on the Cardiac Dimension side, existing investor Horizon 3 Healthcare invested along with an undisclosed strategic investor. And other investors included Arboretum Ventures, another great firm, Host Plus, EQT Life Sciences, Lumera Ventures, and MH Carnegie and Company. So $35 million for Cardiac Dimensions, $38 million or 36 million euro for Volta Medical. So a couple of strong financings for medical device companies starting out 2023.
Nothing to add to that. That's what it is.
It says it all. It says it all. No, it's good to see these companies get the funding they need. It's good to see firms like Vensana putting capital to play. Vensana's had invested in some really fascinating companies to date and led by a couple of great partners. So we'll see where these are headed. All right. Let us complete the Newmarker's Newsmakers. Sean, what is the big number 1?
Big number 1 is a story from the beginning of the week. ReCor Medical names Siemens Healthineers and Terumo veteran as CEO. It's I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Lara Bargout. She's now the president and CEO of ReCor Medical, succeeding Andrew Weiss. And we talked about on the year-end podcast about the personnel changes roundup and how so few of the major company hires, the corner office hires, were women. So it's good to start the year with this news. And right before the end of the year, actually, Active Surgical appointed Manisha Shah Bugaj as CEO. So that's another woman coming into a relatively good-sized company to lead it. So hopefully that's a start of a trend for the year, because like we said, there was not a lot of movement and we obviously pay close attention to women in medtech, and it's a good start anyway.
Absolutely. No, I mean, we were talking about the larger companies, and Lara Bargout was previously with Siemens Healthineers. She was a senior vice president and head of advanced therapies there. So she was certainly on the higher levels. She succeeds Andy Weiss, who we had on the podcast just last month. Actually, he was the second to last episode of Device Talks Weekly, and I had talked to him, and Helen Reeve-Stouffer. She's Vice President of Clinical Affairs. Back in, I had interviewed them probably maybe early November. So when I had spoken with them, and I wasn't able to run the interview until a month later, didn't get a sense that this was happening. But this is not uncommon for a startup to once they get the clinical support and once they get the approvals they need to move forward and to move into the commercial phase, to get someone who's got the big company experience and is able to transform a company from a cool company with potential to a real business venture. So excited to see where ReCor Medical takes rental innovation. It's been something that's been stalled over the past few years, but it'll be nice to see hopefully a robust commercial enterprise take off there. And you mentioned Active Surgical. Of course, we'd have had CEO Todd Usen on the program a few times, and he has moved over and he is now taking over for David Clapper, who is retiring as president and CEO of Minerva Surgical. And so bit of musical chairs going on, but lots of great CEOs. And I plan to think we do the sort of twice a year, the personnel changes roundup. So probably around May or June, I'll see what the biggest changes of the year so far. And I hope that these are just a start for adding more women to the corner office or other executive roles. And going back to Lara Bargo, as president and CEO of ReCor Medical, she joins a strong community of women CEOs in medtech in the Silicon Valley area. You've got Renee Ryan of Cala Health. You've got Erica Rogers of Silk Medical. Of course, got Leslie Trigg, a favorite of ours, at Outset Medical. So as you said, it's a positive trend and one we hope to continue seeing. So great news for ReCor Medical and for the medtech community. Hi, everybody. Tom here. Before I begin this interview with Tom Polen, I have to apologize. I don't know what happened with my audio. It's technical difficulties, as we say in the biz, but it's likely I forgot to plug something in or forgot to shut off my Bluetooth connection to my Beats Flex. But my sound is a little bit off, but Tom Polen sounds like a rock star, thank goodness, and that's why you're here. So let's begin this interview with Tom Polen, CEO, President, and Chairman of Becton Dickinson. Once again, he'll be our opening keynote speaker at DeviceTalks Boston. Keep an eye on DeviceTalks.com for more information. Well, Tom Polen, I'm excited to learn about BD. We've had BD horribly unrepresented on the Device Talks Weekly podcast. We were blessed to have Dave Hickey and Brooke Story on about a year ago, maybe a half a year ago. So we just started the conversation, but looking forward to continuing it. Before we get into the company, though, I'd like to find out about the guest, and I should let folks know that you'll be our opening keynote at Device Talks Boston on May 10th. So we'll consider this part one of that conversation, if that works well for you.
Sounds great. Great time to be in Boston.
Sure is. So let's find out about your path into medtech. What was your draw into the industry? Was it immediate, or did you start somewhere else first?
It started quite young for me. So I certainly wasn't born to get into the industry necessarily. I grew up in the middle of the country. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I went to get into the sciences. And that was really catalyzed back when I was 13 years old. I woke up for school one day. I was getting ready, and mother was helping me do that. And she suddenly collapsed and died of an aneurysm.
Oh, my God.
And so the rest of that day was, as you can imagine, for a 13-year-old kid, with my dad, who's now managing getting my mom to the hospital, ambulance, helicopter, into shock trauma. That was my first kind of big exposure to healthcare then at 13. My mom ended up passing away by the end of the day then. But it was kind of gave me a belief that I wanted to make a difference in healthcare and that there was an opportunity for healthcare to be better. And so I started actually on the healthcare provider side, working at Johns Hopkins in the lab and doing research right out of undergrad, and then joined a small startup company in the Bay Area, right in the middle of the dot-com boom, which, in the life science sector in diagnostics, doing stem cell and HIV diagnostics. Was one of the first 5 or so folks in that company. We ended up growing it up and selling it to BD, which is how I came to BD many years ago, about 20 years ago. So
what company was that?
It was a company called Biometric Imaging.
Okay.
And we ended up selling that to the life science flow cytometry business within BD, or BD Bioscience business. And then I ended up moving over to the diagnostic systems business, our infectious disease diagnostics business, and then across, I've worked in or had responsibility for most businesses in the company over the 20 years after that point.
That's a tragic introduction to healthcare, and I can't imagine my youngest son is 13, so it hits home for me. What lesson have you that must obviously it remains with you as a human being, but as a professional, what is that experience? How does that stick with you and help you guide decisions that you're making as leader of one of the larger medtech companies?
There's a patient at the end of everything that we do. It's something we often talk about in BD. I certainly had that ingrained firsthand and understand that. Today, my wife is a surgeon as well, a cancer surgeon. And so certainly our household is deep immersed in the healthcare field, and a reminder of what we do is extremely important. I often talk to our team about when I'm out recruiting MBA students, et cetera, there's lots of cool industries that one can be in: iPhones, electric cars, et cetera. And people think those are cool. I've got a 14-year-old son who thinks Nike's really cool, and it is cool. But at the end of the day, right, most everyone on the planet, if they or someone that they loved gets ill, the only thing that they care about is getting them well, getting themselves or the person that they love well. And that's the business we're in. So it's the most important, most consequential business, an industry that there is on the planet, obviously supporting the providers who provide care to those people in need. And I think that's something we can all be proud of. We get to fulfill our life's work through our work life in a way when you're working in this industry. And that's something that I know inspires all of our associates and the associates of most of our peers, to be in this industry and work hard every day to make a difference.
Absolutely. I started covering medical devices in 98 when all my friends were covering .coms, and my industry is still in demand, and theirs has certainly changed drastically. So happy to be here. So you had the startup bug. Obviously, you were involved with the startup. You were acquired, or the company was acquired by BD. Was it your plan to go back to doing startups, or did you feel like you just found a home? Maybe you wanted to stay with your technology and see it through. What kept you at BD?
Just tremendous opportunities. BD is kind of medtech all in one. We often talk about if you want to work in medtech across different areas, you just come to work at BD, right? We have life sciences and basic research in our bioscience business. It's helping discover many of the new cancer drugs are being discovered, and Nobel laureates using our technology to understand the immune system, to the diagnostic side in our IDS business, right on through the large supply and infrastructure solutions that run pharmacies and labs and prevent infections, et cetera, in our medical segment, where we make 45 billion devices a year, right on through implantables and the more interventional products that are more physician preferred and uniquely engaged with each patient on a one-on-one basis in our BDI business. And so I think BD is just such an amazing company with such a diverse portfolio and opportunity to impact healthcare. There's a lot of amazing things to do, and with a 125-year legacy of successfully doing that for a long period of time, it's a great company to have built a career. I took a small, about 4 or 5 year period in the middle of my BD career, and I went to Baxter Healthcare and ended up running their injectable drug business, et cetera. But that was not as, there's no major story to that other than I met my wife somewhere in between. And she was an officer in the U.S. Navy and was deployed. As she finished her residency that year, there were 3 surgeons that graduated from the residency program at the U.S. Naval Medical Center in Bethesda. One got sent to Guam, one got sent to Iceland, and she was deployed to Chicago, to the Great Lakes Naval Base there. And so with young kids, I decided BD didn't have anything in Chicago, so I left BD and went to Baxter. And then when she came out of the military and wanted to do a fellowship in breast cancer surgery, she had an offer here in New Jersey, and I came back to BD at that point. So,
wonder where your career would be if she got sent to Guam. This would be an entirely different story. We talked a bit about BD's broad offerings, but when I look at larger medtechs, I honestly don't really know where to place BD. I think of Medtronics and Boston Scientific, and I kind of put them all in this one neighborhood, and BD is kind of an adjacent neighborhood. And I don't know if that's fair of me or not to look at that. How should people view BD? Because I think we think about syringes, we think about all the stuff that's essential to healthcare, but maybe isn't the things that the items or the devices that are getting the attention. How do you tell people about BD, and how should I think of BD?
I think you're on the right track there. So we we think of BD in kind of two major areas. We think about that durable core business that you talked about, which are those products that are ubiquitous with running healthcare. Products like catheters, syringes, vacutainer tubes, hernia mesh, infusion pumps, etc. Things that many people take for granted in healthcare today are there because of BD, right? One of the first things that put BD on the map was inventing disposable medical devices. That was the first device was a disposable syringe that BD invented the technology and to stabilize polymers to gamma radiate them to help reduce infections, which of course is standard of care. And we invented things like the single-use IV catheter as well as a vacutainer tube. And right, the blood used to be drawn with syringes in the past. So those products, we make 45 billion of those devices a year. I put it in perspective. That's 7 devices per human on the planet. And we sell our devices in more than 190 countries around the world. So most countries you find BD in our team. That's what we call our durable core, that backbone of healthcare, and something we're really proud of. At the same time, we've been accelerating our portfolio shift into what we call transformative solutions. And that's really around looking forward at the solutions that are going to be reshaping healthcare. These are irreversible trends that we see reshaping healthcare over the next 10 years. And about 60% of our R&D spend, about 95% of our M&A spend goes into these categories. And it's about $4 billion of our revenue today, growing very strongly, near double digits. And so those 3 areas that we're investing in there are smart connected care and robotics, particularly around improving the efficiency of pharmacies, of laboratories, and of nursing productivity. The second major area that we've been investing heavily behind are solutions that enable the shift to new care settings. So that could be everything from urine incontinence in the home to home diagnostics to being able to have your blood collected in a retail setting, not by a phlebotomist, but by the retail clerk, as an example, as we think about care transformation and the role of pharmacists moving from counting pills behind the counter at your local retail location to actually doing wellness checks, delivering vaccines, or even coming out to collect your blood for a wellness check as part of that. And then the third major part of our investment in transformative solutions is around solutions that improve outcomes in chronic disease. We think that chronic disease has long been associated with taking medications for the rest of your life. We think that technology and devices today can have an increased role in chronic disease management and improving outcomes. Much more significant weighting as we go forward and move beyond the pill. And so, we're investing in solutions in areas like peripheral vascular disease and end-stage renal disease and cancer that are making an impact there. So we're really couldn't be more excited about the future of BD and how we have a major role in transforming the future of care.
Those are 3 areas that are talked about a great deal nowadays. So 3 definitely critical areas for growth I can see. With the connected care area, you mentioned robotics. Obviously, the ears perk up with the mention of robotics in healthcare. How does robotics look to BD? What a robotic system look like to BD?
So we actually have quite a large robotics business, well north of a $500 million robotics and automation business. Well, one of the larger ones in medtech, actually. Pharmacy automation is the backbone of that, but also major systems that are automating the laboratory, like our Keystra microbiology automation platform. And we continue to look at others. We recently did a $1.5 billion acquisition of Parata, which is the leader in pharmacy automation in North America. We combine that with our Roa business, which is the leader in pharmacy automation in Europe, to now be the world's largest provider of automation for the pharmacy, right? Helping to move pharmacists out in front where they can engage more with the patients or consolidate pharmacies in large warehouses. Just given labor constraints in that space and the rising costs of labor, we're seeing tremendous demand for these solutions, not only from retail customers, but from long-term care facilities and large healthcare systems, more so than ever, are creating large, centralized, automated robotic pharmacies, and we're helping them to do that. We're seeing the same thing in microbiology laboratories, where typically microbiology results can take a couple of days to grow bacteria, et cetera. And imagine healthcare systems with 10 hospitals in a close geographic area. We're seeing them design central laboratories and centralize that testing, where then you need automation and robotics to do that. So we have robots that pick street petri dishes, pick colonies, AI that identify is there growth on the petri dishes, and then robots that help determine what the bug is and what drug to use to treat the patient with in what concentration, running with 2/3 less microbiologists than you would normally need And microbiologists are an extremely rare capability to find today. There's just not enough out there. And so we're seeing, again, great demand for solutions like that. We continue to add automation and software solutions in the hospital around medication management. More on the software and informatics side there, around connected devices like infusion pumps, around software that's helping do safe compounding, but that's ultimately taking the burden off of pharmacists, off of nurses. Another great smart device that we just launched is a smart Foley catheter, right? When you're typically, a nurse has to go in and look at how much urine has come out of the patient every hour to determine are the drugs that are supposed to remove fluids from the patient working at the right rate. Smart Foley catheter just automatically loads that information up into the electronic medical record, again, making it easier on the nursing workflow. And so we're constantly looking at new solutions that are improving nursing workflow, pharmacy workflow, laboratory workflow. Those solutions are needed more so than ever today, as you think about 500,000 clinicians leaving the workforce in the last several years since the pandemic started. And we know there's more of that to come. And so it's a heavy area of investment for us.
Well, was this a pivot following COVID? I imagine not. The workforce concerns have been present, but COVID accelerated those like it did so many other things.
I think those three trends that I mentioned that we're investing behind, that smart connected care, the shift to new care settings and improving outcomes for patients with chronic disease, all three of those trends had begun before COVID, but they went into hyperdrive because of COVID. Both a combination of the accelerated retirement of the workforce really caused increased need for that. Certainly, people's preference for how care was delivered, including in their home, as people got to do things like home COVID testing. We saw a big increase in demand for solutions there. I think that's creating irreversible shift in how care will be delivered in the future. Telemedicine, obviously, is something that was a trend already, but accelerated in a significant, irreversible way because of COVID.
So much I want to talk about. I want to get a sense from you, the new care settings. Again, this is something we talk a great deal about, healthcare at home and all of that. What does that look like for BD in 5 years or so? What will be happening outside of the clinical care setting 5 years from now that's happening in the clinical care setting now? Or at least what are you sort of preparing for?
There's a few things. So I'd say there's healthcare at home and there's hospital at home we talk about inside the company. And we have solutions that we're developing for both. So when it comes to healthcare at home, for example, COVID tests for at-home use.
Yep.
We have in clinical trials, our flu COVID combo test, more important than ever to have a solution like that today. Do I have flu or COVID? We see those coming to market here in the not too distant future. We're working on, of course, we invented Vacutainer blood collection. It's ubiquitous with the way that blood's collected today. We have a new product in the pipeline that's in clinical trials that we'll be submitting to the FDA this fiscal year, which is the version of that for at home and in the retail settings. We call it BD MicroDraw, and it's meant to be able to collect blood in a retail setting, or eventually we see that within the next 5 years, collecting your own blood at home and pressing a button on an app and having it picked up by an Uber-like driver.
Wow.
And helping to improve compliance with getting your annual physical, et cetera. That can often be a barrier of when can I go get my blood drawn. Draw it yourself at your house and send it in. We think that can enable a whole new wave of home testing and capabilities there that empower patients more so than ever. And we want to be the ubiquitous standard for that, just like we are for testing that happens on blood in more organized, professional collected settings. Mm-hmm. So, those are some examples of when we think about healthcare at home for those who are already healthy. I was thinking about hospital at home. Again, many of the devices that are in the hospital that are being used, that are standard, that are used for every patient. Over 90% of any patient going into a U.S. hospital will be touched by a BD device. That's a fact. Those devices have all been optimized for professional use settings. And so everything from infusion pump technology to PICCs, how far they hang out of your arm, maybe one dynamic in a hospital could change in a home setting. How a Foley catheter versus an external catheter and how that device is used. For example, we have a device called PureWick at home, which enables urinary incontinence to be managed at your bedside where you don't have wall suction, which you would need in a hospital for that. We have a small portable device that sits at the foot of your bed at your house. And so we see a whole new set of solutions that are going to be needed that are also more connected as healthcare can move to the home, and we have a key role in enabling that. And so again, we're really excited about the role that we can play in enabling a new transformation in healthcare over the next decade.
Well, BD's been wildly acquisitive over the last 2 years, and we'll talk a lot about those acquisitions, I think, in DeviceTalks Boston. One deal I wanted to talk, or it's actually a collaboration I wanted to talk about, and it may fit into chronic care, was I noticed in October you signed an agreement with ReCor about their NJ technology to pair it with BD UltraSafe passive needle. It sounds as if you're going to be able to track self-administered drug therapies and track whether or not they're being administered or not. Is that where that's going? And that would sound like maybe it's a treatment for something to help monitor treatment for diabetes or other things that are requiring care at home. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. Actually, the fastest growing business in BD is our pharmaceutical systems business. This is a business that our customers are pharmaceutical companies, and we're providing the injectable devices that they're pre-filling their drugs into and then providing them either to clinicians. So if you've ever had a vaccine, the doctor just takes out the syringe that already has the vaccine in it. That's a very, very likely our syringe that's already been preloaded into. But also a large portion, for example, 60% of all biosimilar insulins are coming out in our insulin pen, where we have new wearable patch injectors, things that maybe you would have had to go into a healthcare setting to get an infusion of. We could do with a disposable wearable device that we have products that are in clinical studies with that today. So we're seeking to enable not only continued safe delivery of using pre-filled devices partnered with pharma in professional settings, but we see a whole new wave of those coming into the home for people self-injecting themselves. Of course, one of the key things when you're now moving that drug delivery and enabling patients to do it is, are they actually delivering the medication? Where are these devices? Are they authentic? Are they being stored properly? Are they being injected? Is the patient being compliant? Many of these drugs are biologics. They can be extremely expensive. And so making sure that there's cost-effective use of these expensive biologics in a home setting, that the patient's truly getting the outcomes that are being expected and paid for and the patient deserves, is important. And we think this is where digital can play a really important role. And that's the spirit behind the relationship that you saw announced there.
Great. Final question. I know we have to go in a minute, but like as I mentioned, you made a number of acquisitions over the last couple of years. Are you going to be busy digesting these acquisitions over the next 2 years, or are you going to continue to be busily acquiring other technologies to augment your own portfolio?
Yeah. So we've done 19 acquisitions over those last 2.5 years. And,
wow, more than I thought.
going really well, each of them. As we think looking ahead, I wouldn't expect that we're going to do 19 acquisitions over the next 2.5 years. As we think about this next phase of BD, which really started late last year, look at larger, fewer tuck-in acquisitions. Still tuck-ins. We have no plans for transformational M&A, but I think the Parata acquisition is a good representation of that. Over north of a $200 million revenue company, $1.5 billion acquisition, and in a very fast-growing space that's highly aligned with our customer segments and other elements of our portfolio. We see a number of other opportunities more in that category than smaller ones. The first ones that we began with were great products that were just coming to market, often with less than $50 million of revenue, that we could take global, that we could leverage our channels or our portfolio offering for. And they've done really well in our hand. And we'll continue to do those selectively, but we'll also look at some of the more impactful ones as we've been very actively evolving our portfolio to align with these future trends that we mentioned. Of course, you also saw us spin out and create one of the world's largest dedicated diabetes drug delivery companies with the spin out of Becton this past year as part of our portfolio strategy. You saw us bringing in 95% of those 19 acquisitions were technologies that are in those 3 transformative solution areas, right? So we're really reshaping BD's portfolio into those faster growing spaces that are going to be reshaping the future of healthcare. And you can expect 90+% of the acquisitions that we do going forward will be aligned with those trends. But it doesn't mean we can't there's some really exciting ones that we did in our core as well. One of those is a technology we acquired last year that enables our one-stick hospital stay for patients. There's 3 things patients always have top of mind: how How easy is it to find a parking spot at the hospital? What's the food taste like? And how many times am I going to get stuck with a needle? And the reality is the average patient on an average hospital stay gets stuck 14 times with a needle. Typically, many folks are aware the first stick you typically get is a catheter. And then catheters, of course, are meant to be stiff when they go in your body, but then soften so that they don't irritate the inside of your vein as they're sitting there for several days. And so what that means is you can't draw blood through a typical peripheral catheter because when you put a vacuum on it, the tip of it slams shut because it's a wet noodle. That vacuum just shuts it. So you have to stick the patient a couple times a day to draw blood. One of the technologies that we acquired last year is a device called Pivo that allows you to draw blood through the catheter that you put in. And so you put a catheter in, and then you can draw all the blood that you need, typically several times a day, through that one stick that you already did, thus enabling the one-stick hospital stay, which fits in extremely well with our portfolio as the leader in peripheral catheters in the world, with a very large commercial organization that can help support our patients in adopting this new technology. And it's the first product that I've seen some of our customers, providers, actually take billboards out to advertise how they now have a one-stick hospital stay potential, because it's such an important topic for patients. And I know I've had loved ones and family members who have gone in and even had to get 3 or 4 sticks just to try to find the vein. And that's something that you want to avoid. We've all seen the bruised arms of folks who have been in the hospital for a while, and there's an opportunity for that as a durable core product for us, to help transform healthcare as well. So
that's amazing. Well, my 13-year-old son is needle anxious, so he's happy folks are on the case of solving these problems. So, well, this has been a great conversation. We'll have a lot to unpack when we talk again on May 10th. Tom Polen, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Tom, thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you in May.
All right, well, that is a wrap. Sean Hooley, thanks for filling in for Chris Newmarker. We hope to have you back on this podcast very, very soon. Until then, where can folks find you on social media?
You can find me on social media on LinkedIn. My name is Sean, Sean Hooley, Whooley. That's probably the best place if you want to get in touch and connect. I am on Twitter as Sean Hooley, WTWH, but not as active as I probably should be on there. But we'll maybe try and remedy that in the new year. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
That's great. I'm also on LinkedIn, Tom, Salemi. Please connect with Sean or myself when you share this podcast, and we'd really be grateful if you did. I have a Twitter account, but I haven't really been on it very much. So use LinkedIn, please. And yes, please share this episode, or actually, this is where I normally ask Chris Newmarker to ask people to
follow, subscribe.
There you go.
I'm rusty in the new year. Give me a break.
I caught you a bit unawares. That's right. Like, follow, and or subscribe to the Device Talks Podcast Network. You'll get the Device Talks weekly podcast. You'll get Stryker Talk. You'll get Intuitive Talks, and we're going to be rolling out some new podcasts in the new year. So please do subscribe to the Device Talks Podcast Network so you don't miss any great insights. And while you're in the subscribing mood, of course, make sure you subscribe to Medtronic Talks. They have their own channel, and we'll continue our Medtronic Talks podcast in 2023 as well. And that's it. We'll be starting up our Device Talks Tuesdays season next month, so we've got a little time there. And we'll be opening registration for Device Talks Boston probably later next week, and we'll have a really healthy and generous early bird registration rate. You want to make sure you do not miss that. So keep an eye on DeviceTalks.com. We will include updates on speakers as we did in today's episode, as I did up at the top. And we look forward to seeing you in Boston. So, all right. Well, great job, Sean Hooley. Thanks for doing such a great job filling in for the ailing Chris Newmarker.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.